Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. It's an absolute pleasure and an honor to have the opportunity to spend some time with the Guadalupe Basin Coalition. Exciting times in Texas, unprecedented actions across our state to address flood, as well as communities continuing to move forward to make sure that we have the water that we need today and we have the water that we'll need for the future. So who is the Texas Water Development Board? We were established after the drought of the 50s when leadership across the state came together and said, we will never, ever, ever let this happen again. We'll never let Texas run out of water. And we were charged with, in my mind, three things. First of all, as the engineer on the board, we are the data repository for all water data for Texas. So important that we have good data and information for decision making, for planning, as well as to help communities move forward with water supply projects. The better the data, the better the science, the better the science, the better the policy. And from a science standpoint, so important that you have that raw data available to everyone, so that communities can look at the data, draw their own conclusions, and use it to develop new technologies. So we are the data repository for all water data for Texas. We are also charged with water planning. We have, in Texas, it is a bottom-up process. Another way of saying that is nobody tells Texans what to do. We believe local communities know best. So there are 16 regional water planning groups across the state. They're made up of representatives from big cities, small communities, agriculture, industry, and they all come together and say, what do we have today? What do we need for the future? And what are those strategies or projects that will get us there? We do it every 5 years, and it's a 50-year outlook. A very comprehensive and data-driven process. Secondly, we are a bank. We have money to loan right here at home. You won't get a better interest rate anywhere than the Texas Water Development Board. We have very low interest financing to help communities move forward with both wastewater, water supply, and now flood infrastructure projects. Lastly, our staff can provide and be a technical resource. We can't engineer the project for you, but they've seen a lot and can offer suggestions and their thoughts and ideas. So important moving forward that, and in my mind, what it's all about is making sure that our children, and these are our children and our children's children have the water that they need. So just a quick program update. Since inception of the board in 1957, communities are turning planning into projects, and we have hit the red letter mark of over $30 billion in loans and grants to move important water and wastewater projects forward. Nearly $1.2 billion to rural communities just in the last 10 years. And for the State Water Implementation Fund of Texas, created by the Texas legislature in order to specifically move projects forward that were in the state water plan, we've committed to date close to $9 billion, creating 1.5 million acre feet of a new water supply and saving communities across our state over $1 billion. It's been said that Texas is in perpetual drought, punctuated by times of flood. And I think it was very intuitive during the last legislative session that the Texas legislature, in my mind, kind of charged the Water Development Board and gave us the resources for kind of the 1-2 punch. I think they recognized that for long-term success, we needed a state flood plan. We didn't have a state flood plan, and recognized that it needed to be developed in very similar way as the state water plan, based on science and data and tying financing to planning. At the same time, I think they recognized that it was going to take a while for this to get in place, and that there needed to be some immediate action to provide both structural and non-structural mitigation projects so that we could start moving forward very quickly. So the board was very honored to have been charged with putting together the first ever state flood plan, as well as moving forward and helping communities to get both grants and low-interest loans through the Flood Infrastructure Fund of Texas. We received about 280 applications, estimated at over $2 billion in requests. We have basically gone through those, put together what's called the Flood Intended Use Plan, and prioritized those projects, and are now in the process of going through them and ultimately awarding about $770 million in grants and low-interest loans to help communities across the state start moving forward with flood mitigation projects. On the planning side, what we know is that we need to approach things completely differently than the way we've done it in the past. We can't just have an area flood and go back and try to correct what happened in the past by mitigating based on the past event. We need to be thinking about what could happen in the future and about changing weather conditions and about future development, and utilize that type of information in putting together an aggressive plan that will help to protect human life and property. Governor Abbott calls it future-proofing our state. We may not know what's coming, but we need to be prepared for it. Certainly, one of the charges of Senate Bill 8 was that planning be done in a basin-wide manner. And so the board established 15 regional flood planning groups that were formed around the river basin boundaries. Certainly, the strength of our regional flood planning process resides with the members and their leadership and engagement. We had a tremendous response from across the state. Over 600 people either nominated themselves or others nominated them to serve on these initial regional flood planning groups. 180 were selected based on their commitment to public service, understanding of the flood risk and issues, affiliations with the interest categories that are noted here, and their willingness to work together cooperatively in a leadership role to protect communities from the effects of flood. Just wanted to give a shout out to Glenn Lord, who asked me to give this presentation, and he serves on the Lower Brazos Regional Flood Planning Group, which is pictured here, Region 8. And, you know, along with the other flood planning group members from across the state, we're looking for, you know, great things to come. Wonderful to have their thoughts and ideas, their innovative approaches. And, you know, pretty much by the numbers, we'll have 15 flood planning regions. We'll have 15 regional flood plans. We've allocated about $19.5 million to the planning groups for them to be able to hire technical consultants to work forward and do the tasks that they're charged with doing to put together the first regional state flood plans. 180 voting members, 150 non-voting members, and at the end, one state flood plan. All of the regional flood planning groups have accomplished 3 tasks. They have elected a chair, they have approved their bylaws, and they have selected a political subdivision to act as their sponsor. So for the Guadalupe Basin Coalition, the flood planning group is Region 11, or the Guadalupe Regional Flood Planning Group. And the chair that was elected by the membership is Doug Miller. And they selected the Guadalupe Blanco River Authority as their sponsor. So the hope moving forward is that this will very much be a collaborative process, that people will feel like that they can attend, and they are encouraged to attend and present their thoughts and ideas during the public engagement part of the regional flood planning group meetings, that they would feel like they could pick up the phone and talk to any of the regional members on anything that they might want to contribute, making this a very stakeholder-driven and public process. Again, incorporating mapping, planning, and mitigation in moving forward with the regional flood plan, and then ultimately the statewide flood plan. Each of the regional flood planning groups will be executing to a very prescribed process in terms of evaluating risk, and then coming up with strategies or projects that will help to mitigate that risk. They will be responsible for a three-step analysis. The first being a flood hazard analysis that determines the location, magnitude, and frequency of flooding. Then a flood exposure analysis to identify who and what might be impacted within the region. And then vulnerability analysis to identify vulnerabilities of communities and critical facilities. This is very much a stakeholder input-driven process based on science and data, basically giving communities the tools that they need and the best information so that they can identify risk and then determine what level of risk they want to mitigate to, so that we're preparing ourselves for the flood event and protecting property and human life. So planning and turning that planning into projects that can move forward. So what do we know so far? We know that there are different kinds of floods, and I'd like to kind of share with you some of the different types of flooding and some examples from around the state. First off, there's structural failure flooding. Although uncommon in Texas, failure of man-made infrastructure such as dams or levees can occur, resulting in uncontrolled releases of floodwaters. At our board meeting on December the 3rd, the board approved $40 million from our Clean Water State Revolving Fund for the planning, design, and construction of Lake Dunlap Dam, which had a spillgate failure, as shown at the top left picture, in May of 2019. A second type of flooding is stormwater flooding. It's also called urban flooding or localized flooding, and happens when impervious cover prevents rainwater from soaking into the ground and rainfall overwhelms the capacity of drainage systems. Riverine flooding is abundant rainfall that can result in more runoff entering a channel than can be contained within its banks, causing the water to overflow into adjacent lands. Flash flooding is characterized by a short lag time between the rain event and rapidly rising water levels. Flash floods are the #1 cause of flood-related deaths in the United States. Shallow flooding includes sheet flow and ponding, and that occurs in flat areas where there's a lack of channel means for the water and the water cannot drain very easily. Coastal flooding occurs oftentimes from strong winds combined with changes in water surface elevation that can produce a storm surge that drives the ocean water inland. High tide events can also cause flooding in low-lying coastal areas. And of course, we see all of these across Texas. There are a variety of things that we could do to mitigate flood, and here are two examples. On the left, mangrove trees along the Texas coast help to create wetlands that not only help stabilize the shorelines and absorb storm surge, but they're also important nurseries for our Gulf Coast fisheries and ecosystems. Preserving existing mangrove wetlands or restoring lost mangrove habitat is one non-structural way to mitigate coastal flooding. On the right, the Galveston seawall represents an example of a structural solution we can use to reduce flood risk, particularly during Gulf storm events like hurricanes. It's an elevated structure that increases the elevation of the city of Galveston, thereby preventing some of the effects of storm surge and wave action. Here are a few more examples of structural solutions to flooding, all of which are infrastructure projects that move, contain, or change the flow of water. On the left, you'll see the Anzalduas Dam on the Rio Grande River near Mission, Texas. In the center, storm drain systems in urban areas. And on the right, you can see a stream bank stabilization project intended to prevent further erosion when flash floods or stormwater flows quickly into what was previously a natural drainage area. Here are some more examples of non-structural solutions to flooding. On the left, you can see some homes that survived the nearly 20-foot storm surge of Hurricane Ike, thanks to new building requirements of 18-foot elevation on the Bolivar Peninsula near Galveston, Texas. Though this may seem like a structural solution, typically what we and FEMA refer to as structural has to do with major infrastructure that controls the movement or storage of water. In the center, you can see an example of the Turn Around, Don't Drown campaign, a public education campaign to teach people not to cross flooded roadways. Educational campaigns and flood warning systems are examples of non-structural solutions to flood. On the right, you can see a Texas Water Development Board funded project near Houston, Texas. The engineered wetlands pictured here are located in Houston at the Audubon Society's Oaks Nature Preserve and help to contain and absorb rainwater. This is one example of a nature-based approach to flood mitigation. Personally, I believe moving forward there's going to be a great opportunity and there's going to be a tremendous emphasis on doing both structural and non-structural as well as structural and nature-based solutions and doing them together in tandem, recognizing that oftentimes the benefits that you can receive doing both of them collaboratively and together far exceeds the benefit that either can provide individually on its own. So I really look forward to the work of the regional flood planning groups. I think we'll see some new and exciting thoughts and ideas and solutions that will come out and incorporate both nature-based and non-structural solutions along with structural mitigation efforts. So just to recap, here is an overall timeline for our first Regional Flood Planning Group planning cycle. Things have been kicked off. We had the first meeting, so next up in February-March timeframe of next year, the groups will be contracting for execution with the planning sponsors and the Texas Water Development Board. In early 2021, the sponsors will be soliciting for technical consultants. Work will be ongoing with the end goal of the first regional flood plans due to the Water Development Board in January of 2023, and then our first ever state flood plan due to the Texas Legislature in September of 2024. About half the funding that the board is receiving to support flood planning will be used to execute something called base level engineering. And as you can see, there are three primary components of generating BLEs. Figuring out the shape of the bowl, which is LIDAR, how much water is going into the bowl, or the hydrology, and then how the water is going to move once it gets into the bowl, or the hydraulics. The end result is the BLE. BLEs are the foundation on which all other mapping activities are based and will be available upon completion. We intend to have updated BLEs statewide within the next 5 years and will continue to be updated on a 5-year cycle going forward. The Texas Natural Resources Information System, or TNRIS, which is part of the Texas Water Development Board, acquires LIDAR data through partnerships with other federal and state agencies, with FEMA contributing a large amount of the funding towards that effort. TNRIS serves as the Texas Geographic Information Office, and Richard Wade, our director of TNRIS, serves as the Geographic Information Officer for Texas. LIDAR is believed to be the most important data set to drive our science-based approach. And the way it works is, to me, really interesting. As an airplane flies across the terrain, hundreds of thousands of laser pulses are sent out per second in near infrared range. The light pulses strike the ground and are reflected back, and then a sensor on the plane captures the reflections. The distance is calculated based on how much time it takes the pulses to return. The result, or the outcome, is elevation data that is accurate point by point for all 3 dimensions. So, big news flash. Statewide LIDAR coverage is complete. We've recently just acquired 100% of the state full coverage, which is a huge step forward. The areas in the green on the map at the right are counties that have LIDAR available for download on the TNRIS website, which is most of Texas. The areas in the blue on the map are the counties which we have newly acquired LIDAR, and that LIDAR is currently in production. So this high resolution topographic data is the foundation on which flood hazard modeling and mapping are built. So with LIDAR, we are developing the BLEs, and this gives you kind of a snapshot of where we are. The purple reflects the areas that are completed or in progress. There are 3 shades of green, in generally showing that this is a phased approach moving from east to west. Each phase may take a year or a little more. The black lines show the regional flood planning group boundaries, so you can get a sense that the eastern regions will have, and some already have, complete coverage. And of course, our goal is to have all of Texas done by 2024. And wouldn't it be great if there was a place you could go and actually be able to download this BLE data as it is developed? And the answer is there is, thanks to a collaborative partnership with federal and state agencies, FEMA, the USGS, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers and the National Weather Service have come together and put together a estimated base flood elevation viewer landing page called Inform. So you can actually go out and get the BLE data as it is developed and download it and use it in the regional water planning process, as well as it can be used by communities looking to have better mapping information in order to make decisions on moving forward with flood mitigation projects. So if a picture's worth 1,000 words, say you were working on a project, and this particular example is near Sweetwater. Your first step would likely be to go pull the paper map that was available, in this particular case, a 1960 USGS topo map. And the information available would at best have been on 10-foot contours. With the new LIDAR technology, we have more detailed topography resolution down to the 2-foot level. So bottom line, more detailed, more accurate elevation data means better resolution and can help you better locate an optimal alignment, better assess permitting needs, and better estimate construction costs, and ultimately better determine your flood risk through base level engineering. This example is also near Sweetwater, and here we are showing how we can use the data to build a hypothetical pipeline. The current FEMA data on the left image shows some flood risk, but it's mostly off the map. This is because FEMA flood maps do not cover 100% of Texas, and most of what they cover is based on very approximate data. It used to be that you would request a PDF of the paper model in a library, scan it if it's even available, and then manually input it into your GIS software. But now, the more detailed terrain information, it's more accurate, more user-friendly, allowing more accurate and precise mapping of floodplains and risk information. You can literally click on a point to get the elevation of water to best determine the path of the pipeline. So anywhere BLEs are available, the models are available. You can download and integrate with your software to scope elevation and determine flood risk. Another utilization, in addition to planning, is for emergency management. The image on the left represents a digital firm, or a DFIRM. Out of the 254 counties in Texas, half have DFIRMs, and the other half have paper firms or no maps at all. The image on the left shows an area near Seguin with approximate flood risk data. It appears there is more flood risk south below the road because of the wider floodplain, and we all know that water doesn't flow to an exact point as indicated on the left. The image on the right shows base level engineering data, which uses LIDAR and shows a different story from the left image. The flood risk here is now revealed, based on better information, to be more significant north above the road and less than previously assumed south below the road. but it shows the road is clear. Again, you can download the data and integrate it into your software, and emergency management may use the data to determine that this road could now be used as an evacuation route, whereas before it shows it inaccessible. The two purple shades show both 1% and 0.2% annual chance, which is not always available for many of the FEMA maps. We've shown how BLE data can be used to build a new pipeline or to assist emergency management. Now let's take a look how it could potentially help a developer. The image on the left shows the flood risk data as shown on FEMA flood insurance rate maps near Clear Spring in Guadalupe County. The base level engineering on the right shows a whole new flood risk area from a nearby stream that was not previously mapped at all. Our staff went to Guadalupe County to meet with the floodplain administrator, and they validated the accuracy of the data on the right and that the area did indeed flood. The new BLE represents additional data to determine potential flood risk. Again, BLE data can be represents a significant improvement in the quality and coverage of flood risk data as compared to FEMA regulatory data. It's freely available on the web, and the Texas Water Development Board is committed to having 100% coverage in Texas within the next 5 years. It's considered non-regulatory, but it can serve as a precursor to detailed FEMA studies and also could be adopted locally or as a FEMA map update. So what we've talked about today is an unprecedented effort that combines and integrates mapping, planning, and mitigation for the first time ever in Texas. An integrated flood program has never been done like this at this scale anywhere in the world. This is an extraordinary milestone and an extraordinary program. We'd like to stay in touch and invite you to visit our website. You can click on the envelope in the top right corner to sign up for email notifications and click on the flood tab to get all relevant flood information. In closing, I'd like to thank the Guadalupe Basin Coalition for your leadership and for your engagement. Together we're building a stronger Texas. I'm just continually amazed at the resourcefulness, of the commitment, and of the engagement of people across our state. You know, we can have the money and we can have the technology, but it's up to the local leadership to take the bull by the horns and move projects forward. And they're doing an amazing job, whether it's with wastewater treatment or water supply or now with flood mitigation projects. As the engineer on the board, I kind of find this interesting and wanted to share it with you. This is a project that the board funded with Tarrant Regional and with the City of Dallas. They're building something called the Integrated Pipeline. It's a 150-mile pipeline that's going to meet the water needs of 1.5 million Texans. And I'm told that this is the world's largest gate valve. It is 45 feet tall. The part that shows above the ground is 2 stories tall, and it weighs 110 tons. I think, you know, indicative of when, you know, Texans put their mind to something, it gets done. It's because we work collaboratively, it's because we're innovative, and it's because we care for one another. Again, just thank you for your leadership, thank you for your support, and keep up the good work. It was wonderful having the opportunity to share with you what's going on at the Texas Water Development Board. I do bring in greetings from our other 2 board members. Peter Lake, who is our chairman, he serves in the financial slot. Brooke Popp, with all of her energy, serves in the business and legal slot, and of course I serve in the engineering position. We are not regulatory, we serve as a resource, and we are all about continuous improvement. So any thoughts and ideas that you have on how we can accomplish our mission and do it in a way that's more efficient and something that better serves you, please let us know. We are available for anything and everything that you need. Please just reach out and let us hear from you. Again, stay safe, and it was wonderful having this opportunity to visit with you today.